and showing up, right? And actually showing up, to exhibit her work when, given those opportunities. And, people don't see that kind of work that we invest into our art practice. They just see us at a show, lights, camera, action, and all of that. They don't see the work that goes on behind the scenes of artist life. So, again, congratulations on that. And I was scrolling through your website as you were presenting, and upon your the Joy of Freedom screen print and abstract work. You didn't show that to us during your presentation, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that body of work. It's so free.
Yeah, and I can screen share so folks at home know. Or can you, Adira, can you give me access to screen share?
Yep, I'm on it.
And transporting on the CTA is probably one of the most joyous I've ever transported anything. Because one, it's cost effective, which is real. Because getting a truck each time, that adds up. But folks are really curious. And so it always felt to me like a walking art show. Accessibility is always one of those things I think of with galleries and like open hours and closed hours. And that's why my exhibition right now is at, a co-working space. It's open 7 days a week. Anyone can walk in and just run into a painting of mine. And I love that. And so it felt the CTA felt the same way, where I could just kind of pop on a train and people would be like, did you paint that? I'm like, I'm the person holding it. Yes, I painted it.
But it was the wind that day. It was really windy that day. It was hilarious.
The wind is manageable if I only have one painting. I found out the hard way that if I have two paintings, then I get some kind of like wind tunnel. And so there was one time I had two paintings and I was just like holding on to both for dear life. And I had to scream in the middle of the street and be like, help me. And these two little white women were like, what the heck? And I like ran across the street and I like got the paintings. And then I was like, okay, I'm good. Go away. Proceeded to cry. And then Lester Ray, a very, very wonderful musician, came and picked me up in his van. Thank you, Lester. So yes, but I'm committed. If I made the painting, it's going to get to where I need to go. And so in regards to the abstract work, yeah, I feel like I'm super energetic, and so much of my abstract work is done live. And so in the process of doing the the photorealistic portraits, there's always, I like to get a handle and a feel for things, as well as just play with a bunch of different materials. And so I think it's just my natural kind of sense of energy. I love doing things that are quick, and I love doing blind contours. And so I love to do portraits and life study and drawings without looking at the paper, because I feel like sometimes my head gets in there. And so these are all watercolor monotypes.
Look amazing.
And this is also another portrait of Jo Anil. And so it's just plastic with some like black gesso or some black paint on it. And I just scratched it onto there with the back of a paintbrush. Because especially when it comes to doing something so calculated, and when you do portrait, it's a beautiful thing and it's a beautiful gift. But sometimes, especially when I was doing them in theme parks, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of expectation. And there's some people who are ready to see themselves, and some people who feel that they're ready to see themselves and then they are not. Or some people who, that are anywhere across those spectrums. And so as much as I do portraits for other people, I love to do portraits for the process, just the joy of making. And so that's where these kind of come in. Also another Jo Anil. And then I also end up having like a bunch of source material left. So this was one of the quick drawings of Rochelle. I just love different materials and to make things. And this is another one on black silk velvet. This was done right after I did that really, really meticulous velvet painting that took months and lots of practice. And so after I finished it, I was just like, let's make a mess. And so I pushed oil paint from the back of it and just kind of got really wild and really free with it, because that was just what my spirit called for. Because as much as I am like astrology, like I'm on the cusp of Leo and Virgo, and those are very present. Like the part of me that's very meticulous gets like feels good in that, and then gets constricted and bursts out, and it's just like, Phoenix. So that is the joy of freedom, the other side of my personality. And then Alpha, I know you also had a question about a second series.
That was, I woke up like this.
No one's ever asked me about this series. And so I did a series where I took a picture of myself every morning, just because I'd be looking different every morning. And so it says like this daily project is about honesty, confidence, natural hair, humor, and vulnerability, and the relationship to public and private intimacy. I think for me, I've always, I'm just a truthful kind of individual. And so I think we're on screen so much and have such, this particular aesthetic and perception. And so I wanted to capture kind of the different elements of myself and do so in a really honest way, in a really humorous way. And then also just kind of have like a gentle way of talking about mental health too, because I think you can see that like sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, yes. And other times I wake up and I'm just like, no. And then a conversation about Blackness and, and our hair, because I definitely be waking up and sometimes I'm just like, ooh, And other times I wake up and I'm just like, I definitely look like I just, like exactly how I look. And I just love curly hair, and I just love the different shapes it makes. I feel like each one is a bit of a sculpture. It's a good one.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, for opening yourself, and showing us that part of a presentation that you didn't ask for, but I asked you to participate. So we're going to turn our attention over to Tracy. And so Tracy, I'm going to ask you that same, question. What are some ways you as an artist examine the state of your environment through your visual work, community, and curatorial space?
Wow. Well, I'm going to first say, just going back to Liz's work ethic, I can vouch for it. I think that is one of the things I always think about as a curator. In my 30s, I really switched from making work myself to really trying to support others making work. And a lot of that was just in response to coming from a working class family and beginning to get administrative jobs, or good jobs as they're called, good jobs, right? And jobs that could be generative for my family and supportive for others. And just as I kind of started to use my labor to support others that were younger and coming up, I also started to use a lot of the time that I would have devoted to my own artistic practice to help others and promote other artists. And so Liz is the type of artist that I genuinely want to support because of her earnestness. Her talent is undeniable, but there is a way in which she's really centering the desire to communicate and connect with an audience, and not just talent and not just ego. And so I think that really speaks to me. But I know that we're getting a little bit long here. So it's evening. I put in a full day of work too. So I want to be mindful of time. Rather than answer that question, I'm just going to move into the presentation and kind of show you a little bit of what I think about when I think about work. So I'm going to see if I can share the screen. And let me see. All right. I'm seeing you give me the thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, perfect to both of you. So One of the things that I really think about that is at the center, and if I miss any of your questions, Alpha, let me know. But I think when I think about the work that I'm trying to do as an artist and curator, it is really based in a dream that I had. I had a dream um, that I was in a field, and in the field, I got to a certain part of the field, and there was a part of it was fenced, and it had this like kind of wide gate, and I could see that beyond the gate, you know, it looked really like fertile ground. A lot of things were growing, and I could hear as I got closer, when you enter, leave the gate open. It was a song. When you enter, leave the gate open. When you enter, leave the gate open. And I woke up and I still had that song. And so I really understood at that particular point that that was really my sort of mantra, both in terms of my professional mantra, that the work that I do should be soil for others. It should be fertile ground for others. And that my work in the arts and the art space and the arts sector should also be generative, that I should be able to leave the gate open. So a lot of my practice is about making sure that Black and Brown artists in particular are seen in the work that I do, so that their work can be elevated, and maybe that will shorten the time between when they're seen by the larger community and when they experience like, lift or trajectory in their careers. And I'm happy to say that that has happened. And that really is my goal. So just going to be talking about Rootwork Gallery and Black curatorial practice in collaboration with the ancestors. So this, a lot of these images that I'm showing are older. Some I integrated just a few newer things. The gallery's now become itinerant. This sign here, which was in the window of the gallery, which was on 18th Street, right under the highway in Pilsen. This sign was created by Jahari Palacio, perpetual rebel, a graffiti artist and a fine artist that lives in Austin, Texas now. But he had come to visit, and I said, I'm not going to put a sign up. I'm not going to hang anything up. I just want one thing in the window. And we were going to do something else. Another friend was visiting, and he just quickly, he had his tools, he's a graffiti artist. So he just got to work, and he did this in, I don't even know how many minutes, but for the entire 4 or so years of Rootwork Gallery, this was the main sign to identify it. It never had a website. This is my grandmother, Bessie Sanders Scott. She was, like many grandmothers, a big teacher for me. It's really funny because as I think about my grandmother, when she was alive, my grandfather was the apple of my eye. And so I just lived and breathed for him to come home, or we were always doing things. But really, the constant teacher that I had was my grandmother. And so much so, my grandmother, like a lot of people from Louisiana, they use like a lot of Creole words. And so when I was in school, in elementary school, we would have those spelling tests, and I would put in the sentence, like I would phoneticize or a Creole word and write it in, and I would get the spelling word right, but the sentence wrong, because the teachers would be like, "What are these made up words?" And I would say, "This is how we speak at home." So I think about my grandmother because she was from a very rural town, and our family was from such a small rural Black town that in Los Angeles, when my friends started to visit and I started to be able to have company, my friends would ask me, "Is my family from the Caribbean?" Because our folkways, our Black folkways, were so deep. So I credit my grandmother because a lot of the practices that are root work practices, she knew them, she taught them to us, and they were not hidden in our home. And we were always in conversation with the dead or the unseen in our home. So my grandmother is the one who I dedicate root work to, and really gave me the idea in a lot of ways. My own practice, I don't really show a lot of work. I have shown work in Chicago. I really stopped painting and making when I was in my early 30s, about the time I came to Chicago. But this is a piece that I made for Marie Laveau, and a bad photograph, but just some images. These are, if you came to Rootwork, some you would have seen, if you looked in nooks and crannies around the gallery, there was always some root work, always some hoodoo. This is honey money, you know, just something that you use, a little honey, a little cinnamon, you put some coins, you put some dollars in to draw prosperity or abundance or just actual money. So these were all throughout the gallery. And some people would see them, and sometimes what I'm taking a picture of here is that people would start putting other money in there. So sometimes people who would find them would never announce I found them, but they would always put in additional funds. So I was always finding money in the gallery because people recognized what these were and would add to them periodically. The gallery always had an altar. In this particular case, this is an altar for Oshun. This was Sarah Beth Wood's, one of the first shows in the gallery was called Braidwork. And this is an example of her really recognizing and seeing and really trying to elevate, I think, Black hair techniques to the level that they really deserve, which is to understand the artistry and the ornamentation that goes into them, the careful thought and geometry, and just the care, and sometimes the fragility of these hairstyles. So this is one of my favorite pieces. This is more work to just recognizing braiding as an art form. This is Victor Lee Givens, an artist that I met. I was actually a panelist in a conversation. It was just a straight ahead conversation. And to illustrate maybe what I thought I might want to talk about, I had taken a lot of waist beads. Whenever I've worn waist beads throughout my adult life, and whenever they break, they recognize, I really see a change, and they kind of, in some ways, predict a change that's going to happen. And so I have brought this whole handful of waist beads, and afterwards, Victor came up and he said, "You were really brave. You know, this is just a straight ahead conversation about arts administration, and you are talking about spirituality." And just on the strength of him asking me that question, I said, "I want to know more about you, and I want to see your work." He didn't even tell me that he was an artist, but I knew that whatever he was making, for him to ask a question that he asked, that he had something to show. And this is him. This is in the gallery. Anytime, the gallery always begins with a ritual cleaning. Usually I would do that, or my gallery assistant, Kayla Johnson, would do the ritual cleaning. And this is one of the few times that I actually had the artists do it themselves, because I knew that Victor, you know, I knew that he would understand that as being fundamental to his building an environment with his work. And he's gone on to do amazing work. The last time I saw some of his work was at the Habana Biennial in Cuba a couple years ago. And his work was really the talk of the city when I came, and I would expect nothing less. This is more of Victor's work, a medicine cabinet. Victor set up an altar in the gallery, and this is a friend of mine, Joan, but she, upon seeing the installation, she immediately, and here she is, she's chanting, she's Buddhist, she just understood exactly what was happening. And many times in Rootwork and various shows, people will cry, they're not able to stay in the gallery, or they're drawn to the gallery, unable to leave the gallery. And I wanted to just demonstrate the degree to which the gallery really functioned in a lot of ways as a portal. This is a hallway going downstairs. I love that the gallery had an above and a below, literally. This is a hallway area that Victor and I curated just to signify that if you were willing to take the journey downstairs, there were going to be some other things that would greet you there. And in my own work of late, now that the gallery is itinerant, I moved the gallery about 2 years ago. I have been teaching a lot of classes on traditional medicine, on using herbs. And in this class, this is a student who's learned to dress a candle and to make a floor wash, as well as Van oil in the little jar with a cork. This is, I showed an artist who was extremely young. She was still an undergrad and a junior, and she was taking photographs of abandoned towns. And there was so much. I could say a lot more about this work, and this is the artist Jamila Regan taking in the work. And I love this because what I pride myself on at Rootwork is that it was a place where artists came to see other artists' work. Curators came, of course, the general public, but what I loved is that artists came to actually take in and study other artists' work. And I have so many photographs of artists really studying other people's practice. This is the great Tanika Johnson. This is a photograph that she took at the Family Den. I'm showing this because when I met Tanika, she identified herself as a street artist. She said, I'm a street artist and I take images, out in the street. I'm a street artist. And I issued her a challenge of going back into her community of Inglewood and taking pictures of interiors, of people inside interiors from morning to night, to demonstrate the lived experience of Inglewood, really, and the rituals that were engaged in the everydayness. This is for an exhibition that she was a part of called Everyday Rituals, which was extremely important to the gallery as well as to Tanika's career. And I simply love this Bringer of Libations photograph. If you can study this for a long time and see, every time I look at it, I see something different. In the show, this is more of Tanika's work. We put roses, like I think hundreds of roses on the wall. And that was something that the artist, as well as carnations, the artist really wanted to do. And so it's about that care and making sure that we bring the environment that they envision to life. And along this wall too, we really said a lot of prayers and set intentions about love. And I cannot tell you, there are couples that are still together who met at Rootwork, and people would come to this exhibition and say, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like love, or, whatever. So this is more of Tanika's work. This is her inside of a beauty supply. And I always try to respond, if I can, to an artist's work. So I just wanted to kind of create a kind of like put the experience of that in terms of the ephemera and objects next to it. Case in point, this is a couple group that came to Rootwork, and I had these mirrors on the floor when people weren't there for the exhibition, and I would invite people to look in them, and they looked at them until their heads got closer and closer and closer, and I said, voila, that's exactly what I just wanted to take a picture of them becoming more intimate. I think this is where I met Liz. During this time too, my own practice ranges from performance to art, object and art making. And one of the things that I did is to set a performance called Making My Mother's Bed, in which I made my mother's bed for 6 hours and had the artist Anansi Nobody and the painter Stephen Flemister actually filmed this, and only about maybe 20 people came during the night. But in it, I really dealt with a lot of the grief around my mother. My mother died really unexpectedly, but one thing that I noted is that before she went to the hospital and was rushed to the hospital, I called the ambulance. I was doing everything, rushing around the house, calling the ambulance. She was so sick. And what I didn't know is during that time, she made her bed meticulously. I mean, to almost, and that was my mother. And I always say that the sign that my mother knew that she was not going to come back home was how well she made the bed. So I made and unmade the bed for 6 hours in acknowledgement of that. These are just sort of what I call activations, you know, in a continuum of activating spaces. So these are just elements around root work. This is an image of me. The biggest image is a still from the filming of making my mother's bed, and just some of the ephemera that was associated with this. The exterior of root work. Eric Clark, a genius artist who's moved out of Chicago, is extraordinary. And let me see here. Again, activation, ritual space. This is a piece of art that a visitor, Lavia, to the gallery is actually begins to say prayers on. This is an artist, one of the most profound artists. I say that by everyone. I'm listening to myself. Amina, sometimes some of the artists that I connect with at Root Work, they will only be in Chicago for a season. And she is one of those artists who was in Chicago for a short amount and then moved to Mexico. And this is a piece from her work, The Black Girl in Search of God. This is a mathematician. This man who's visiting is a mathematician, and she has mathematical equations, and he's actually looking at them. And he came back to the gallery again to study the mathematical equations. Just a profound artist, Maya Amina. Dancer, we always did a lot of interdisciplinary work. This is an activation, Who's Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone, in which I invited Black women who work around Black women's issues to hold ritual around the gallery when we were seeing a proliferation of Black missing women, of women going missing in Chicago. And we know that Chicago is definitely one of the hubs of sex trafficking in the country. And so it was multi-generational, including women from A Long Walk Home, as well as many other artists and healers who gathered. This is the work of Alexandra Antoine. I think she's a profound artist of Haitian descent in Chicago. Here's the great Liz Gomez and the great Alexi Irving studying Liz Gomez's painting. And Liz, along with Gloria Talamantes just some of our just amazing artists. Do you want to say anything about this piece, Liz, about what you all are doing here? You're sitting in front of the Gloria Anzaldua's altar with Veronica Dorado.
Yeah, the entire exhibition was just so powerful, and Veronica and Glow and I continue to be in conversation, and there were just so many elements of it that came together. Even the fabric on the floor, which is dipped in red, was like a donated gift of like Victor B. Givens, a previous artist in the space, and so there was just so much meaning, and then us being in direct conversation, I feel, with the work. Why am we just said the name? Can you remind me the name of Gloria Anzaldúa?
The exhibition was My Womb is My Altar. Yeah, and Gloria Anzaldúa, you can see her image. So I'm going to stop there. This is a good place to stop, and we'll see if we'll see what questions. Again, we'll end with the mirror here. This was just an activation in the gallery.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Tracy, for just sharing that with us. I really, really appreciate it. It was really, oh, wow. And I've actually been there for some of those exhibitions. So it was just nice to just kind of revisit that. It was very nostalgic. Yeah, so our last question that we had, and I feel like, you talked about it a lot already, but the specific question was, how do you incorporate art into your spiritual practice or ritual? But I really feel like, a lot of the work that you've done with Rootwork Gallery and continue to do, and similar to you, Liz, it's really about spirituality. But if you all have like a little last thing to say about that, you can definitely share if you would like.
Yeah.
For me, I figure if I'm experiencing it, then there's truth in that experience. And so for my own personal healing and my own personal wellness, like that's where it starts. Like I think I was making work in my studio so much before I was showing work, because it's a part of my healing and it's a part of my wellness. And so to have gone through what I've gone through and to be able to translate it in a way that people can feel something and can see something, and through the combination of those things, find resonance in their own experience and find kinship. I think it's a combination of those things. Like spirituality in my work is my personal way of processing my life to ensure that I'm the healthiest that I can be, and as well as providing a mirror to let somebody know that they're not alone in their experience when it comes to the works of the spirit pieces. And then also just kind of understanding. Someone once said that looking at my work feels like I'm looking at the divine feminine, looking at these individuals through the eyes of God. And that for me, I was just like, oh, God. But that's really the how I feel about the people who surround me. I really love every person that I paint, and Tracy included on that list. And I feel that to have the gifts that I have, or that I've really, really worked for, to be a vessel of painting these people is a superpower. And it's one I plan to use very plentifully and very intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I just echo that. I think it's in the DNA, that connection. And I'm just so happy to be, able to connect with you, Adara and Alpha, just acknowledging you and a community, here in Chicago, especially beyond as well. But in Chicago, I think right now there's a conversation that brings art and healing together in a really profound way, in a way that really invites you to reflect and to, be free and open. And I'm just grateful. So I feel like it's in my DNA, and I've shared why, but I also think that it's in sort of the sociological DNA of what it is to be a Black woman in Chicago at this time.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for that response. And, I've got a chance to see you wear various hats around, Chicago beyond your art practice. And even when you're presenting the verbiage and the way you articulate different, and you massage language, you have a way of taking that crossover into your professional life, and as Victor said, you spoke on spirituality and art administration, panel, but I think that you always bring that feeling of and interject that balance when you're presenting, as because you're so grounded, in the work that you do, and it's present, in you. So I always enjoy talking with you, and when we hug, that exchange of energy that transcends between the two of us. I really appreciate you, Tracy, and all the work that you do. And as an administrator and executive director now of American Library Association, that brings a lot of weight, onto your shoulders, and this is not a question that's prepped, but it's a question that I, really would want to answer, because how do you find that balance? Because there's a lot of pressure, and even more pressure when you're a Black, Indigenous person of color with the realm of, a large organization like that you work for.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, it, I feel probably in the way that Liz felt on the train when she's trying to deliver this huge painting, right? She's done the work. Other people are curious. Some want to help. But ultimately, she has a sense of mission and a sense of calling, right, to get it where it needs to go. And that's really, for me, what I think for me, my career has always been about. It is really about that sense of calling, and also understanding that spirit makes way, right? It isn't ever about me, because if it was about me, I would be, right now, I've just been like drawing these like studies of things I want to do with leather and fiber, and I may not get to them for years. But so I have this other life, this other cosmic spiritual life, of things that I'm accumulating inside. So when I go to work, I can really surrender, and say that this is really about my service. And every day I'm learning, how to get more and more out of the way. So that's what it feels like, on my best days. Now, on the days where I feel tired, stuff like that, where I'm like feeling like, wow, then I really have to call on my resources, and I have to remind myself of my grandparents and my great grandparents, and the fact that how they felt and what they thought wasn't usually expected of them in their labor. And a lot of my labor is about my ability to envision, to ideate, to lead, to motivate, to troubleshoot and to problem solve, to negotiate, navigate, all of those kinds of things. But I do it because I understand that my family, like yours, brilliant people, genius people, but often they were used for their bodies and not for their minds, and I take that very seriously. So that's when I don't have anything else, that's what that's what I'm pulling from.
All right, and thank you, for that. And I hope that so many other people take that energy, and that explanation and use it, for their own well-being. So when we talk about a call for action, it is to recognize arts and culture as a valuable and available resource, and engage the sector as a critical partner in advancing health in the US. And a lot of organizations want to partner with artists, but in doing so, they're not really, they're not really addressing the need for the balance of art and, and health and spirituality. So this curatorial practice, Adara and I felt it was very important to do a call for diverse artists, women, people of color, LGBTQIA, and disabled artists, to provide works that reflect each scene of how we intersect, and the intersectionality that affect our lived experiences. So again, we want to thank you both for joining us in this art talk and this conversation. And we'll see you at our opening. It'll be virtual. The exhibition dates are July 10th through September 5th.
Yes, thank you both so much. This was so wonderful. It was so good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share the stage with Liz and the two of you. This was beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for the work that you're doing as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop recording.